you need to distance somehow, or you just kind of emotionally distance yourself from that and just know it's going to happen, and just realize whenever you go into any of those particular meetings or whatever, any sort of interactions, just know it's going to happen and just distance yourself off and just kind of make light of it as much as you can. So I know that's hard to do for a lot of people, but you just have to go into it and just know that it's not necessarily you and it's that particular individual. And if you have that mindset, it's much more easier to deal with what's going on and just try to make light of all of that. And I know that's difficult to do when you're in this kind of moment of time, when you do have a lot of insecurities yourself. But the quicker that you kind of get into that mind switch of just not really caring what other people think, that's going to help you out a lot throughout the academic journey. There are people in the academic world that have a lot of things that are going on in their brain, and they're projecting sort of a lot of emotions, or a lot of, maybe it was personal experiences that they had growing up, all sorts of things that they're projecting onto you. And it doesn't matter where you are and what stage you're at and who you're interacting with. It could be deans, it could be, all sorts of different people that you're going to interact with within the academic life. Just kind of have that mindset as like, yeah, you know what, I don't really care. Or students, and that's going to help you out with the process. I know not everybody can do that, but just try to do that. Now, a second thing that could be happening when you feel like your PhD advisor thinks you're stupid is that they are attacking your particular idea, and they're not necessarily attacking you per se. And that's a difference, right? So what we try to do, and I try to make an emphasis on this, particularly when I'm reviewing other people's work, whatever it is, that I'm not focused on the individual, I'm focused on the idea, because every idea when it starts out is terrible. I guarantee it is terrible, and it just needs some refinement with this. As you're working with it, you just kind of need to massage the idea and attack it in many different dimensions, and that happens repeatedly, and particularly if you're working on sort of bigger ideas or ones that you're really proud about, or maybe it's for your PhD thesis, for example, that you're working on. You just have to keep beating it up, but some people get mixed up and they attack the individual rather than the particular idea. And when that's happening, you can actually say, I just feel like you're directing the emotion that you have at me rather than the particular idea. And that's okay to sort of point that out. A lot of people do need that kind of hunch or feedback that they are attacking the wrong thing, and that's okay, right? That's actually a really smart, intelligent, mature thing to say, is let's focus on the idea, come back to the idea, and let's keep attacking this particular idea and trying to make it clearer such that you can deal with this, or you can sort of refine what's going on. And as you sort of interact with more people, they are going to start attacking the idea. And particularly at more challenging schools and more challenging institutions, they really do focus on the idea. And sometimes it's just like, it's like going into the Shark Tank, right? So if you imagine the Shark Tank on TV, or Dragon's Den, depending on where you are in the world, and people are just asking you all sorts of questions and tearing this particular idea apart. That's what it tends to be when you're presenting your idea, right? And if you can get to the sort of state where you're defending those ideas in a nice way, or and every once in a while just saying, I didn't think about that. That is a really good insight. I got to look into that. Idea sort of dealing with this is in that sort of way is going to help you refine the idea and get it much more cleaner, such that you can deal with that, right? So you want to direct the emotions at the particular idea rather than you as an individual. So point that out if they're getting too aggressive and say, whoa, you're getting too aggressive. Let's focus on the idea and let's get back to refining the particular idea. Now, the third thing that could possibly be happening is that you're just working on something that somebody else cannot possibly see, right? So, and this happens again, it's because ideas are imperfect. And if you interact with people and you have this wonderful idea, sometimes it's really hard to transfer what you're trying to say to other people, and it's not necessarily all that clear. So when I started this whole reciprocity project, I had this thing in my mind of what I wanted to do, and it was really difficult to sort of communicate what this is to other people. And it's been refining as I've been working at this and doing more videos, but as well as talking to other people. And what is happening, and this is actually a discussion that I had with Daniel Newark at HEC. Check him out. He's a really interesting professor, wonderful person. HEC is in Paris. Wonderful individual, got great ideas. So anyways, we were having this conversation, and part of what I think is going on when you come up with a new idea, when you are interacting with somebody, and it's just so unusual that sometimes they just don't get it, right? And so sometimes it just takes a little bit of interaction with them and repeated interaction before they get that. So it might take, if your advisor is just not getting what you're trying to say, just kind of stick with what you're trying to do. Make sure it's a good idea, obviously, and then just keep refining and keep coming back and saying, I think this is a good idea. Let's keep working at this. Now, what happens if they just simply don't get it after many repeated interactions? Well, you have to maybe find somebody else that is going to get that. So it's not necessarily your idea is stupid or you're stupid. And that's what I'm trying to point at and get you to think about. It's just that it needs refinement. And in order to get something on the market sometimes, or get an idea on the market, if you could think that you're selling your ideas, what you have to do is get it so that the other people see what you're trying to do. And sometimes, it just takes some refinement in terms of, if they are giving you some sort of input that you're like, oh, well, it's just blah, blah, blah. And then you can come up with this kind of thing, like you could say, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm actually doing this. And as you interact with people, you start to realize that there's patterns in how the questions that they're asking, right? So the more people that you interact with, the more patterns that you start to see. And pretty soon you have all of the questions, and then you start thinking about answers to those questions before they even ask them. And then that's how you actually craft the particular idea that you're getting at, is you start with the answers first, and then they're like, oh, I kind of get what you're trying to get at, right? And so as you evolve with this, it becomes easier to address some of these ideas before you actually get to that. So with this whole reciprocity project, you're starting to get it. And as I'm interacting with you on a regular basis, you're kind of getting at what I'm trying to do, right? This whole, helping out other people in academia, as well as creating sort of tools for people that, that need help with their writing, and as well as allow researchers in the background to get access to A/B testing, which I think is a really interesting phenomenon that's happening. And that's just taken a long time to get people used to this idea, and working through this and communicating this message. It's just taken a long time for people to start seeing it and also see that other people are accepting it, right? So that's an important thing. So maybe if you're having this kind of, if you feel like you're stupid with your PhD advisor, so sometimes having conversations with other people, maybe it's academics of the same status or higher status or whatever, and if they start seeing what you're getting at, then you could say, oh, I had this wonderful conversation with blah, blah, blah. Be careful with that. Sometimes people get really uptight with that. I can have another conversation. But if you have that, and you say, this other person thought this was really cool, and they suggested we do this, they might start sort of picking up with what you're trying to say and understand what you're trying to say and say, oh, you know what, if this person thinks it's kind of a good idea, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe we got to address this and go forward. And now that's a rational way of thinking about this, and it's there's not a lot of emotion that's tied to any of this kind of stuff. So just realize whenever you do these kind of things, anything that's new, there's always going to be emotion tied to it. Generally, there's some really cool psychology research that shows that with new ideas, people have negative emotions associated with it. So just know you're going to experience that, and those negative emotions can be, they can show up in many different weird ways if you're interacting with people. It could be aggression, it could be anger, it could be sadness, it could be, fear, all sorts of different kinds of negative emotions that can come out as you interact with people, but just expect that to happen, right? That's part of the process. Excitement is a really big one that's going to happen, particularly, if they are, just on the cusp of what, trying to figure out what they're getting at, and so they get really excited and agitated, and it might come out in negative ways. Just know that that's going to happen, and kind of compartmentalize the emotional part of it. And I know that's challenging, but just realize that's going to happen. Compartmentalize it and keep going forward with what you're trying to do. Nobody thinks that you're stupid. In fact, we all think that anybody that is doing this, we realize that it's challenging, it's very difficult. You've gotten through a lot of hurdles at this moment. You are incredibly smart.